Today is our final principle of design, number 7, proportion and scale. Today we're going to learn about proportion and scale. Proportion and scale help humans understand just how big or little they are in the world around us. It also helps an artist communicate the size of something in their artwork. Proportion and scale can be a simple thing to draw sometimes, but they can have a lot bigger ideas. Scale and proportion are both design elements that have to do with size. Scale is the size of one object in relation to another object. So for our worksheet, I'm asking you what proportion and scale are. Let's stop at proportion and scale. Let's start with scale, the bottom one. Scale is the comparison of two different objects by size. The key here is that it's two different objects. Humans can see scale according to their body size. So you use your body usually to compare to the size of something else to think if it's big or small. A lot of the words that we might hear are some things that are life-sized, some things that are miniature, things that are oversized, gigantic, tiny, enormous. These are all adjectives that are typically used by comparing our body to the size of something else. Some toys are miniatures of actual objects, for example, model cars, model trains, doll houses, things like that. So let's go up to proportion. Proportion is an element of design that shows the size of the parts of one object. So for our definition, we're going to write the size of different parts of a single object. And our key here is a single object. So if I'm up here, I can put a little star, one object, and scale would be using two objects. Okay, now that we have our definitions, let's move down to some questions. I have an example of both scale and proportion. On the left, I have a picture of a face. A face that is drawn in this style is called a caricature. This first picture is using proportion. It's using proportion because of two reasons. One reason is different parts, and it's the same object. So the different parts are kind of the different parts of the human head: the eyes, the nose, the lips, the chin, the forehead, the shirt, the hair, the ears, everything. Those are all different parts, but it's the same object. So we have different sizes of parts, like a big nose, big ears, and then small eyes, small chin, but it's the same object. It's a head. Next, we have our second picture. this, if we use our key term from before, you can tell that it's going to be scale, and you can tell that it's scale for two reasons. One, two. Number one, different sizes. And number two, different objects. Okay? So we can see that the human is being compared to the brick. And you can see that based on where they're positioned, the human is smaller than the brick. So it has two different objects being compared by size. Okay, so for our next side, we're going to flip the paper over, and you're going to have the chance to draw two examples, one of scale and one of proportion. Let's start with scale. So scale, we know that we need two different objects because we are comparing them by size. I'm going to keep this example simple. Let's do a circle. And let's do a smaller circle. I'm going to give this drawing some depth by adding a line in the background because I'm overlapping. And I'm also going to give these circles some depth by adding shading. Okay, so this example, even though they're both a circle, they're still two different and separate objects. So I'm going to write myself a little note that says two different objects compared by size. Okay, and to finish this off, let's get an example of proportion. Okay, for a different example, I'm thinking about a car. There's this really fun old comic known as Ratfink, and this really helps me think of things that are showing proportion. So typically we know the size of tires in a car. So the car itself, the whole thing, that's our one single object. So I'm thinking of, I'm gonna draw an oval. I'm gonna make that oval into a cylinder. Then I'm going to draw another cylinder. drawing a larger cylinder, and I'm keeping the idea of a car in mind. Okay, we don't need to go too crazy with it. I'm basically just drawing a car that is not proportioned correctly. Maybe we can give it some smoke. Okay? So the things here that are not correctly proportioned, I'm showing proportion because we know what a car looks like. This is a odd looking car. So we have one object with different size parts. Okay, and that's it for today's example. Go ahead and pull out your checklist for success and finish column for day 1. You need to go through each principle of design anchor chart and write down yes or no to tell me if each anchor chart is correct and completed both front and back. Raise your hand if you have any questions today.